Greetings, friends. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here. I'm really excited to be here with you all. I think we're going to have a good time, a good hour together. And one of the things that I think is so important when taking any endeavor in learning something such as Ayurveda, something like yoga, which Ayurveda, the science of life, Ayus is life, Veda is knowledge. But whenever you have knowledge, like real knowledge, that then gets organized and in a systematic way, becomes a science. So organized knowledge becomes science. So that's why Ayurveda is called science of life. Over 5,000 years old, practiced in India. Grew out of the great kind of shamanic traditions, very indigenous traditions of India, but then also flourished in India's great golden age with great wisdom sages, people of tremendous realization, tremendous connection to life itself, the energy of intelligence, of love and life. Those are the three magnetic qualities of the human spirit, the human being, the nucleus of the human being. Those three magnetic forces, those magnetic qualities are life, the pure energy, prana, light, pure intelligence, tejas, and love, pure sweetness, pure bliss. And so that's a starting point for us when endeavoring down the pathway of understanding Ayurveda, which is really the understanding of life itself, the understanding of our own minds and our bodies, and is exploring really our very architecture, what we're made of. Like, how does our psyche operate? How does the body operate? Because if we can understand it in its most essential elements, then it gives us a power. It gives us empowerment, because now I can understand that if my body is going off balance in some way, I'm experiencing that, then I will likely be able to understand and to tune in what ways is it going out of balance? How does it feel? And then that will give me the ability to bring myself back into greater equanimity, to bring the body and the mind back into greater equanimity. And what's more important than that? All of us from time to time are going to go out of balance. All of us from time to time are going to have some type of sickness. So we want to be able to navigate whatever life brings us in a way that is coming from a place of wisdom. And so this is really the beauty of the science of life, the great science of life, Ayurveda. But whenever we're going to take an endeavor like this, to study something like this, first of all, to know that this is not only just intellectual knowledge, but it's almost like a poetic science that helps us to, in a certain sense, tune into our own intuition. So it's not just a head trip science; it's also a heart science. So in that way, we could more accurately say it's the art and the science of life, because the art comes from the heart. The art comes from your intuition. The art comes from your ability to take whatever knowledge you may have and then apply it to whatever the experience of your life is in a way that is totally appropriate for that time and space. And so this is why I very much love studying this type of work, this type of artistry, as well as science, because it really requires you to just come to the present moment, to tune in to how it is we're feeling. Whenever we sit down and we have the intention of learning something like this, so in India they call it's a vidya. It's not just a book of knowledge. It's not just principles, but Ayurveda in its most pure form is what they would call in India the Ayurvidya. And Vidya, Ayurvidya, what that Sanskrit term infers is that it is a living wisdom. It's a living energy. So whenever I sit down to do a class such as this, I'm also sitting down as a student as well, particularly in the sense that I'm just endeavoring to be a good vehicle for that Ayurveda to the best of my ability. And I would encourage you to do the same in this moment, to just be a good vehicle for the wisdom of life itself and trusting the wisdom of life to guide you along your way. And what we're going to be doing in this class, in this webcast, and I know many of you have been doing our Yogic Path to Perfect Health training already, and so this will just build upon that. Some of it will be reinforcing things you may have already learned, but that's why this never gets old for me, even if I've taught these same principles over and over and over, because my experience of it is to allow it to come alive into the moment and to be applicable to this moment. None of us have ever been in this time and space together before. This is totally fresh and totally new. So if we don't try to go too structured, like let's do this, let's do that, let's do that, then let's do this, there's going to be, of course, a natural flow to it, but to just allow the energy to guide the experience today. I find that that's always the most effective. It's the most interesting, at least for me, because I'm just wanting to be interested too. I'm the one that is also trying to learn as we go, and kind of mine what is that next kind of nugget of wisdom or knowledge that might be helpful to not only myself but also to others. And so when you learn Ayurveda and you learn the principles, it's really hard to ever go back, in the sense that it just makes so much sense. It's just about what is natural. It's learning a language, and in a certain way, like I mentioned, a poetic language that really starts to unpack what is the innate building blocks of our life. What is the innate building blocks of nature herself? How do our minds operate? How do our bodies operate at their most essential levels? Not having to learn biochemistry here and very complicated things, but to actually unpack it in a way it's profound enough that it'll be totally effective for us if we apply it to our life. But it's also simple enough that, as I always like to point out, you can teach it to your children and they'll get it. What's the superpower of the sweet taste? What's the poison or the negative of the sweet taste? They both. What's the superpower of the bitter taste? And what's the poison of the bitter taste? What's the superpower of the earth element? And then what you could say to a little kid, what's the kryptonite of the earth element? And you can translate it into a language that's very relatable to anyone. So this isn't it's not about it being an Indian science. It was birthed from and nurtured through the great subcontinent of India and the great sages and practitioners and students who really preserved it for us all to benefit from it. But in a certain important way, all the indigenous medicine and healing systems around the world are a type of Ayurveda in the truest sense of the word, because you can't really determine what makes something Ayurvedic by its land of origin. So if I have a dandelion greens growing in my backyard, then are dandelion greens Ayurvedic? Or do I need like an ashwagandha plant that originates, at least in partially from the continent of India? So from the way I understand and the way I think of and the way I experience Ayurveda, what makes something Ayurvedic just always depends. What does it depend on? It depends on who is the person? What is their makeup? What is their constitution? What time of life is it for them? Where do they live? And then what is the potential remedy or medicine, whether it's being used to bring ourselves back into balance or just being used to keep us healthy, because we need both. If we wait till we're out of balance to start doing something like Ayurveda, then it takes more work because there's more kind of imbalanced energy momentum that has taken place. So it takes us a little more work to kind of change that tide. If we get ahead of things and we really use these principles not only to bring ourselves back into balance in the areas that we're currently out of balance, but if we learn it as more of a comprehensive system and we look at it as a much bigger overall thing, a way of understanding life, so that we can put ourselves into harmony with nature herself. Now we have something that will really help us. Not just, okay, you take ashwagandha because there's low libido, or you take dandelion because there's toxicity in the liver. But no, you take ashwagandha because it's the ashwagandha time of year. And we want to have good longevity through our lives. And we don't want to get to the point where the vitality is suffering so much that the libido is gone if we wish to have a good libido, and this type of thing. And so this is the bigger context for Ayurveda that I want to start with. And then finally, when we go down this path of Ayurveda, and when we're endeavoring to study anything like this, we want it to be something that we enjoy and we have fun. And we can find some sort of joy and enjoyment in, because anything that we're going to really be able to learn is going to mean that we're gonna have to spend some time with it. And for most all of us, especially when we're in our older part of our life and we have more choices. If you're going to high school and you have to go to algebra, nobody cares if you enjoy it or not. You just have to go do the algebra. But when we get older and we have choices of what we're going to study, then definitely we're most likely to be consistent only with the things that we're truly finding some level of enjoyment with. Maybe we're in such a pain and suffering that our motivation is coming from, we're just trying to alleviate the tremendous suffering that we're currently experiencing, and that's totally real too. And sometimes that's what our motivation is. But even still, if something is we feel resonate with something enough to where we think it may help our suffering, and then even we'll start to experience it alleviating our suffering. Sometimes even listening to the teachings of Ayurveda is a healing effect. Even just reflecting on the principles of life, the principles of nature, it helps to bring more balance into the prana, into your life force. And that helps to give the mind more confidence and clarity. And the one thing we all need for healing is two things: confidence and clarity. We need the confidence that we can achieve what it is we're endeavoring to achieve, and we need the clarity to know what our next step is. We don't need to know all the steps all the way down the road, but we need the clarity to know what is the next step to bring me to the point in my life in which I'm wishing to go and what I'm wishing to experience. I wish to experience real love, real contentment for my mind. I wish to experience real health in my body. That's a journey. That's a path. It's not just like you get there and then it stops. It's always blossoming. It's always unfolding. And so this is something that I hope, my wish is that you'll also find enjoyment in, because I certainly do. I love teaching this. I love talking about it. I love studying it. I love going inside of it, going into it. And that's what intuition is. You can be intuitive about something when you're able to go into it. And that's what my wish is for us right now, today, as we're jumping in, is to go into it, into the science of life. Not just looking at it from the periphery, but let's explore it. Let's allow it to come alive within us. Okay, sounds good. And I know a lot of folks have already registered for the complete course of Ayurveda, which is a 10 module experience that is about to start. And so if this inspires you, you might consider jumping in for that as well. But for now, let's just start here and let's explore the core principles of Ayurveda to start with. So, every system of healing has their different ways of understanding dis-ease, lack of ease, understanding where does sickness come from. Ayurveda's perspective on this is pretty vast, and that's where we're going to start, because this will really unpack very clearly that when we say dis-ease, that it doesn't just mean lack of symptom, absence of symptoms, but it really expands and heightens the bar for not only what dis-ease is, but also, of course, then its polarity. What is health? What is real health? And we're saying the path of perfect health. Well, this makes it even more of a lofty statement in a certain way. So let me show you. Let me go to the whiteboard, and let's talk about the three, what Ayurveda describes as the three root causes of disease. Okay, so first root cause of disease is what is translated from the ancient Ayurvedic texts. My favorite translation from the Ayurvedic scholar, his name is Bhagwan Das, he translates it poetically as the unwholesome conjunction of your sense organs with the objects of their affection. So the unwholesome conjunction of your sense organs, what you see, what you're looking at, what you're tasting, what you're touching, what you're feeling, all of the sense organs, and the objects of their affection. So what determines what is a wholesome or an unwholesome conjunction of your sense organs and the objects of their desires? We can very much more simply translate this as misuse of your senses. All right, but that didn't help that much, does it? Because now you have to figure out, okay, what is misuse of my senses? What is proper use of my senses? Dang it. So now we have to learn all these principles of Ayurveda just to figure out, like, okay, what is misuse of? Some of them are really obvious. You already had a big meal, and you're totally full, but then they served, and maybe you're at like some wedding, and then they serve, let's take you out of the wedding, because at the wedding you should do whatever you want. So maybe you're at some restaurant and you already, you're over full, but then the waiter or waitress comes with the dessert menu, and then not only do they come with it, but they read you all the desserts, and they're really good at it. They know how to make it sound great, and they'll tell you about the creme brulee and all of the different things. And so you go for the creme brulee, and then you have it, and oh my God, was it good? But then fast forward 1 hour later, 2 hours later, and you're not feeling so good anymore, and then you think about, I shouldn't have had the creme brulee. So that's actually covering both number one and the second root cause of disease in the most obvious, most basic way. Now, of course, the challenge here is that when we start to do things that help us expand our sense of awareness and our sense of our mind and our body, well, that gives us greater subtlety and greater refinement in understanding how are my sense organs and senses interacting with my environment, the things of my desire, and what is actually healthy for me and what is not healthy. And what is healthy and what is not healthy is going to change over time as you go through different periods of our lives. But so for the first root cause of the disease is misuse of the senses. So these senses of sight, hearing, taste, touch, and sight, hearing, was that? Sight, hearing, taste, touch. What's the fifth sense? Smell, thank you. Fragrance. So these are our avenues of consciousness. Fragrance comes from the earth element. Taste comes from the water element. Vision, ability to see, comes from the fire element. Air, tactile perception, touch. And then sound, the most subtle of all of the sensory experiences. Sound current is the akasha, the ether, space element. Okay, so number 2, the Sanskrit term for it is it's typically translated or pronounced prajna parad. Prajna is the intellect or your wisdom. Parad is like a just, righteous. Aparad means unrighteous or like a crime or illegal. So often you'll translate the second root cause of disease in Ayurveda, crimes against wisdom. So it's very, very closely connected to the misuse of my senses. The creme brulee, I could even smell it before it got to the table. And then, what is crime against my wisdom? Well, translate it very simply. Knowing I shouldn't do something and then doing it anyway. So it's not a crime against some rule that something or someone else has put upon us. It's about trusting our own sense of intuition and trusting our own wisdom and trusting ourselves when we know better. And occasionally we're gonna know and we're gonna act against it, and then we're gonna say to ourselves, "Well, you know what? I knew better and I did it anyways." Don't we all do that? But that's not completely a negative experience, is it? Because what's the positive? So the negative part is you feel like, I knew better and then I did it anyways, and now I got myself in the situation that I currently am in. Prajna parad. The positive aspect of that is that's one of the primary ways in which we learn, in which we grow, and in which we sharpen our intuition. So if you make sharpening your intuition one of your life's primary priorities, which it certainly is mine, all the time. That's why I get up in the morning, do meditation practice, do the Ayurvedic practices. And a huge part of that is keeping these channels, keeping the life force channels, keeping the mind channels relatively clear, so that as I'm making important decisions on the day-to-day basis, as I'm endeavoring to live my life in good harmony, just like you are, that I can have confidence in trusting myself. So if I just not doing anything to sharpen that, then the chances of me being confident in trusting myself is going to be a little more lackluster naturally. But if I have some disciplines in my life, I have some routines, and I have some knowledge, and I'm working on the wisdom, then I'll be able to trust myself more in making those decisions and trusting my sense of what I do know, intuition, listening to the more subtle parts of the psyche and they call it the voice of the soul, as opposed to being drawn by the lure of the sense organs when they're interacting with your outer environment. Yeah? Cool. Okay, then third root cause of disease. The Sanskrit term is parinam, like Parinam, how it's probably transliterated most of the time. And this simply just means time and motion, parinam. So on one hand, sure, the sun comes up and the sun goes down. Another day has gone by. We're one day older. And so we're always, in a certain sense, working against the force of time and motion, which is aging. And most of us, we don't want to age. We want the aging process to slow down, unless you're 9. And then if you're 9, you can't wait to be 10. That's really exciting. And then if you're 10, just wait till you get to be 11. And then if you're, then like 18 is the pinnacle, you know, until you think about 21, then 21. But then at a certain point, and maybe it's, I don't know when quite it happens. Maybe it's like 25, 26, 27. Oh, what if I'm 30? It's like 30? Do I want to be 30? And then you get to 30 and you're like, 27 was pretty good. And maybe it's when Saturn comes back around after 27 years and you get 29 and a half, which is when your Saturn return ends. Because wherever Saturn was, and by the way, Vedic astrology, Ayurveda, they're two limbs of the same tree. And yoga practice, Kundalini yoga, all limbs off the same tree. This is the yogic science, but we're looking at it from the lens of healing, from the lens of longevity, from the lens of taking care of the mind and the body to build vitality. Whereas yoga is, while of course yoga is concerned with body's vitality and healing, its primary concern is enlightenment. Its primary concern is realization, and sometimes even at the cost of some of the things Ayurveda will say, don't do that. Because a yogi will say, don't ever eat meat, that type of thing. But Ayurveda is a little different, because they'll say, if there's a very high vata condition, give that person some meat. So you have to find out. Ayurveda is not a moralistic system. It's not telling you what's good and bad. It's saying, here's the energetic of this, here's the energetic of that, put them together to get the balance. So it's not a moralistic system. The morals come from you, and we get to decide what resonates for us, and where do we stand, and what do we believe in, and what are we about. And so this is not the end all. These are principles to guide our own intuition, not rules to become a slave to. Too many people use Ayurveda, and it ends up becoming rules that they're then like confined by, as opposed to wonderful principles that help guide their life. Of course, it's some of both, but we don't want to we want to kind of, try not to make this something rigid. So wherever Saturn was when you were born, in the sky, it takes 27 years approximately for that Saturn to get right to where it was at the time you were born, in the sky. So that's what people call, of course, the Saturn return. Is a very real thing. And it has a definite effect on our psyches when it happens, and it changes our perspective of time. And so time and motion is less, though, about the sun coming up and the sun going down. And it's much more about biological time, the motion of your mind. So the good news there is that if you can slow down the activity of your nervous system some, if you can bring your mind into more contentment. I don't like saying stillness, because the mind is only going to be still relatively. It's never still ultimately. That's not its job. But you can have the experience where you can go underneath the rapid currents of the mind, the thoughts, the emotions, the feelings, and then you can experience yourself being more like underneath the waves and not impacted by them, like diving under a wave so it doesn't crash down on you if you're trying to get out to the better surf. And so when we say bring the mind into greater stillness, we mean it within the context of relative stillness, meaning that we're not being impacted as dramatically or dramatically at all by the flow of our thoughts, feelings, emotions, and desires. Because that's what the mind will do, and it will continue to do, to even, as the yogis say, till at least 17 days after a person leaves their body. After a person dies, the psyche in that form continues its projections: thought, feeling, emotion, desire, thought, feeling, emotion, desire. That's the real wheel of karma in the most basic way, at the context of your own psyche. You have a thought. If that thought has enough energy, it becomes a feeling. Feeling becomes an emotion. Emotion becomes a desire. And the desire becomes our behavior. And then that keeps turning the wheel. And that creates the momentum for whatever that is. So what we're doing with yoga and Ayurveda is that we're changing what I call changing the frequency of the desire. So if you can change the inner environment, then all of this starts to change. your relationship to your senses and the objects of their affection, of your desires, changes. And so then if I'm desiring something of higher quality, then I'm not trying to stop my thoughts so much. I'm not being bombarded by my thoughts so much. I'm putting myself in greater synchrony with the natural flow of things, as opposed to always trying to fight against what my mind is doing and what the thoughts are thinking and what I'm feeling, and always being so self-critical. And it becomes a friction that you're always pushing against, and it causes tension in the nervous system, and that doesn't help aging. So what we want to do instead is to learn how to balance the prana in the body, the life force in the body and the mind. We want to do that using our food, for instance. We want to use that doing yoga practices, perhaps. We want to do that using herbs and teas and all the wonderful things that Ayurveda guides us to do, things that we're already doing. And we can just kind of fine-tune them a little to tailor them specifically for our predicament, for our body and mind, for our life right now, for what we're going through. So it's very simple, but it just takes a little bit of learning to start to understand it. So this is what Ayurveda calls the 3 root causes of disease. Parinam is time and motion of the mind. Quicker the mind's going, more agitated the nervous system is, quicker you're aging. And so next week we're doing the other webcast. I want to invite you to attend as well, Subtle Beauty, the Ayurvedic secrets of cultivating radiance and longevity, has of course connected to all of this. And so parinam is when you have better centered life force in the organism, the mind will come into more rhythmic harmony, a more relative contentment. And that will reduce this 3rd cause of disease. And as you're getting older, you can experience yourself also getting younger simultaneously. Even as the body is getting older, you'll have another experience of yourself even becoming more youthful, more alive. And that's how you go from aging, as the Rabbi Zalman in Boulder, or used to live in Boulder, was part of the Naropa family. He used to call from you go from aging to saging. Okay? And so, but then, even then, Ayurveda said, these are the 3 root causes of disease, but there's actually really only one, what you could translate as the one primordial cause of disease. As if 3 weren't enough, forgetting your true nature. So that raises the bar really high, because where this is coming from now is saying that until you and I have experienced the supreme reality in its entirety, the ultimate reality, that's what some people call God. Or some people call it, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter what you call it, because whatever you call it, it's always insufficient, because it's beyond any of our brains and our minds to comprehend, and especially in its normal thinking state. And sometimes in our meditations, we get glimpses of that, of our true nature. But even like one little drop of it in a great meditation, you come alive more. You experience more of your inner confidence. You experience the reality of again, what the yogis and what the sages of Ayurveda, the great rishis of India, described as Sat Chit Ananda, which is those 3 magnetic powers of your being, of your soul. And that's the power of life, it's the power of truth, and it's the power of love. And this is not relative truth, like you got your truth and I got my truth. This is a truth. This is reality. And that's something that doesn't operate in our limited realm of polarization and duality, where there's good and there's bad, and there's right and there's wrong, and there's female and there's male, and there's this side and that side. So this is something much deeper, much more transcendent, but that is the energy reserve, or the well, or the reservoir in which we're tapping when we start to work with yoga practice, when we start to work with Ayurveda practice. We go to that well to then get perspective on our life. If we're in a state of crisis or suffering and we need healing, we will do well to go to that well, to go to that reservoir in order to get perspective. Because if we stay up on the surface of feelings and emotions only, and we don't tap that well of our intuitive heart, then our lives will be very difficult. And all this is saying, here is the way, here is a path, here are principles that will help you do that more consistently. Not just with meditation, not just with yoga, but even in how you use and prepare your food. Even how you relate to food in general. Even how you can use herbs to help. Because this is a big deal, and it's not an easy thing, so we want to hit it from every single direction. And also not using our thinking mind and our willpower all the time. That's why the emphasis is put on lifestyle. Because if I always have to think, I'm going to do this, and then do this, and then do this. No, we need simplicity. We don't need things that are going to overwhelm us. That's not what Ayurveda is about. That's not what the complete course of Ayurveda. Not give all these different new things to do to overwhelm you. It's like, no, tune in to what's going on, apply these principles to what's already going on, and take baby steps, one step at a time. And pretty quickly, you will start to see changes. So when we say forgetting your true nature, what your true nature is, what we say Satnam. That's why when it's in Kundalini Yoga or in Sikh Dharma, and they're chanting that mantra, Satnam, Satnam, Sat, and there's so many great mantras. It's just one, but it works very beautifully in this context. Satnam, Satnam, Sat. It's like constantly chipping away at that primordial cause of all disease. What it says in the Guru Granth Sahib is Jojo dise so rogi. Everywhere I see, all I see is disease. Jojo dise so rogi. Roga is disease, whereas yoga is the opposite of disease. Roga, so if you go to Ayurveda school, for instance, and you get far enough, you'll have roga of the urinary system, roga of the digestive system, roga. So Jojo dise so rogi. Everywhere I look, all I see is disease. But then the scripture says is that only the true realized one, or what they call in that case the true guru, or the true yogi, is free of dis-ease. So in that context could be only like a true Buddha is a fully realized, awakened human being. That's the only true freedom of disease. So all of us at some level are in this realm from this context of what we could call dis-ease. And yet, that's the angle Ayurveda is looking at it from, because Ayurveda is predominantly concerned with healing. Ayurveda is predominantly concerned, it's an expression of the heart. It's a compassion of the heart that wants to see the suffering of beings come back into happiness and health. That's what Ayurveda is. So, of course, we don't always want to think of ourselves in the state of disease, but we also do want to be realistic enough to know that we all have work to do, and none of us have really arrived. And so, therefore, we'll enjoy our journey and not be so discontent with where we are right now. In fact, part of our healing process is to find and learn how to have the skillfulness to be more content with how things are exactly as they are. Because that's going to relax your nervous system. And that's going to relax your mind. And when your mind relaxes, everything slows down a little. When things slow down a little, you won't be as impulsive and act against your better wisdom. And when you're not being impulsive and acting against your better wisdom, then and you have a greater content, even though you might feel the pull in that directions of your senses, you know? You may be like, well, that would be quite nice, but if I do that, it'll probably turn my life into a tailspin. You'll have that wisdom, and you'll be able to say, not today, my friend, and say, thank you very much. I'm gonna go and, you know, Netflix and chill. So are you with me? Do you all understand it so far? So I'm going to erase this, and then we're going to really start to unpack more of the building blocks. Hey, so when I was about a teenager, I was in high school, I developed a digestive disorder challenge. I had, we didn't know what I had, and we were trying to figure it out. But all I knew is that every so often I would have extremely intense burning pain in my lower abdomen. So intense that my parents would have to take me to the intensive or urgent care, you call it, urgent care at the hospital. And they would, you know, put an IV in me and neutralize the acid, and I would be all right. And I was so grateful for that, to like be in that much pain where it feels like, you know, someone's going at you with a knife from the inside type of pain. To have that ability to go and go to the doctor and get relief from that acute type of pain is truly a wonderful thing. And I think we should all be grateful we have modern medicine. We would not want to live without modern medicine. Of course, there's all sorts of problems in it. That's more due to its ties into big money and less to do with its nature. And so there's a place for all of it. The challenge is, in our modern societies, we don't have nearly enough of things like Ayurveda and those types of principles of traditional wisdom medicine. This is not stuff we've only figured out in the last 100 years. This has been around for ages. As far as we know back, this type of understanding and knowledge comes. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel totally here, but we do need to apply the traditional principles to the context of our modern day. So we need both. If you got an acute challenge, then it's likely modern medicine can really help you. And then, you know, this is oversimplification, but generally speaking, if there's something chronic, like say, these doctors had no idea what was going on in my digestive system. I'm very confident if I had access to someone who was doing Ayurveda and was good at it, of course, they'd be able to tune right into what was going on. Turned out what was going on, I had 3 large ulcerations in the duodenum, the first part of my small intestine. And classic for a fiery type person, in living at that time a lifestyle that was exacerbating that fire and under tremendous amount of stress as this kind of strange yogi teenager that did not know he was a yogi or even what a yogi was at that point, trying to figure out life in modern day South Carolina. And so that was a stress of identity, a stress of trying to find my footing, and then trying all sorts of different ways how to figure out, how do I get happy? How do I be content? How do I find my sense of belonging? That created 3 big old ulcers in my, you know, obviously I'm sparing all the details, but the big picture is that in retrospect, that's what was happening. And so they found out what was going on because of the procedure they have where they can just put the tubes down your throat and actually take pictures of your digestive system. That's how it was determined. So at that point, that little purple pill had come out, and they were able to give me that purple pill that then allowed me to be more or less symptom-free as long as I took the pill, taking the purple pill. So thank goodness. I mean, I would rather have that, I guess, if you can't, if there's no other good options. In this case, there were definitely for me other good options. I just didn't know what they were, but I sensed they were out there. And that began my search, yoga. That began my search, Ayurveda, finding first Kundalini yoga, and then pretty immediately Ayurveda, because I'm trying to figure out how to not be in pain without taking this the pharmaceutical medicine that had some potentially not desirable long-term side effects. And so I wasn't trying to take the shortcut, but then regret it later. That would have been what? Pragnya parad, crime against my wisdom. So fortunately, in that case, I followed enough of whatever wisdom I had. And I flew out to California. I moved to California and started to study Ayurveda formally. I had already at that point for a couple of years been studying it casually on my own, but then formally went to school. After I went to school, I graduated, I started to working in their Panchakarma center and Ayurvedic spa, giving Ayurvedic therapies, Panchakarma therapies. Eventually, I was the director of that center and clinic and seeing patients. But then over time, I just learned, as we all do, where is our groove at? Where is the calling of our life? My greatest love is teaching, and so that's where I find the art in my life, and you have your way that you find the art in your life, and that's a big part of this. Is Ayurveda is not just about herbs and ghee and food and dal and that kind of thing. It's so much more than that. But I do realize that sometimes I don't talk about that stuff enough, because I like to more like wax poetic over here, and then everybody's like, yeah, but what do I do with the dal that I just bought? What do I do with all this ghee? And we'll get there for sure. We will only get partially there in this class, but if you jump into the complete course of Ayurveda, you'll know all that stuff. So what was going on with me though was, and again, I'm simplifying it for our purposes here. It was imbalance of fire element in a human body and mind that was born with a constitution that was already fiery. So a human being, a person, a body like mine that has already a fire constitution, generally speaking, when that person goes out of balance, they tend to go out of balance in a fiery-like way. Now, there's really almost an infinite variety of ways that fire could go out of balance. The fire portion of your digestive system is the small intestine. So water and earth element govern the stomach, where it's thick mucous membranes. Fire element governs the small intestine, where you have the hot enzymes, where the food is really digested, assimilated, metabolized. And then the large intestine is governed by air and ether. That's where everything becomes drier, like the winter, so that it can be eliminated out of the body, the waste product. So hopefully what we take in, we metabolize the nutrient, the prana, what's useful in that food, and then we're able to eliminate out what is not useful. So you literally are what you eat, but you're also you are what you assimilate, and more importantly, you are what you don't eliminate. And so that's why the starting point of all Ayurveda protocol, when we actually put it into practice, is you start with your digestive system. But you start with the digestive system of the body, and kind of what we've been talking about thus far already in this webcast, the digestive system of your mind. That's your intuition. That's the more subtle sort of the psyche that is able to perceive what is real, what is not real, what is good is what is not good. So anyhow, so when you have a fire person that goes out of balance, now I look back, that's why I say it's kind of textbook Ayurveda. There's some that are not textbook, and it's really hard to figure out what's going on with this person. But I was textbook Ayurveda, fiery pitta, but they couldn't figure out why is someone so young have ulcers. I would get the nurses and the beautiful people of the deep south. They'd say, honey, how in the world you got ulcers? You're so young. And they would tell me that. I was like, I don't know. It hurts. And now you look back and you see, there's an identity crisis essentially happening, or an identity transformation is what we should say. And you have the pitta person, and then I can't figure anything out. Let me try this alcohol. That sure helps relieve my nervous system and relax my nervous system. I finally feel okay, good. All right, but then that goes on and on and on and on as it does, and it burns a hole into the lining of the digestive system. So in Ayurveda, what you do is when you understand what elements are prominent in your constitution, that gives you the wisdom and the knowledge on how to balance your body and mind proactively. So you don't have to wait. If I already know I'm a fiery person, I need to do things actively on an ongoing basis that is part of my lifestyle that doesn't keep me thinking all the time. I just kind of know what to do, and I can apply it whether I'm out in a restaurant or I'm at home or wherever it is I am in my life. I know which elements, more or less, that I need to keep in check, because that's my tendency. If you're an air and ether type person, you're going to tend to go out of balance in more of an anxious way as opposed to an angry way. Or you'll tend to go out of balance in more of a fatigue way as opposed to more of a burning hot way. You'll tend to, if an air and ether person, Ayurveda calls vata, if you're an air and ether person, you tend to get cold, not hot. You tend to get worried, not angry, and this type of thing. So we all have our unique things. If you're a more earth and water person, Ayurveda calls kapha, you tend to, when you go out of balance, you get heavy. You can get melancholy, and this type of thing. Instead of having trouble putting on weight, like the air and ether person, you'll have trouble keeping it off. Just eat a little bit, you gain weight, and then my friend, they just eat nothing. They not only ate her plate, she also ate half of mine, and she doesn't even gain a pound. You can never see it. But that's different metabolisms, different constitution, different balances of the element. Why not understand this stuff? It's so easy to understand, but it does take a little time. You have to say, all right, I want to understand it. Let me give it an hour a week for a period of time so that I do. And then my whole rest of my life will benefit. So let's go back to the whiteboard and let's unpack all 5 elements. So, first element, earth element. When we're talking about elements, we don't mean just like earth. These are again, it's more of a poetic science than it is. Not talking literal earth. You have to have a bit of a more spacious mind to study this type of thing, at least at this point. And people say, well, yeah, what about this? They want to go right to the dosha, or right to the herb that's going to be best, and that's understandable. I get that. But for that, go to a practitioner, and they'll prescribe something for you. What we're doing here is really understanding it. So if you do all of this first, then you go to the dosha, then you go to the herbs and the remedies, but you have the backbone of the wisdom and understanding. It's like learning to fish versus somebody serving you a fish. And I want to teach you how to if you go to the store and you're getting your food or you're getting your herbs, you'll be able to use these principles to apply to yourself, because the marketing campaigns of products are not fine-tuned to you in most cases, especially when we're talking about herbs. They're like, well, this is good for everybody. Well, some kind of are good for everybody. But the main principle in Ayurveda is nothing's good for everyone. Everything is right or good for someone. So when we're talking earth element, what we're talking about is the principle of stability, the principle of solidity. So anything that gives an organism, so taking in this case your body, more stability, that would be the earth element of that organism. So of course your skin and your bones and your muscle tissue and the tissue, the physical part of the tissues in general, is more predominantly earth element. Of course you have some elements that are some tissues in the body that have more water, have more fire, etc. But what we're talking about right now is what is the structure of the organism, what gives it. But here's the thing. In Ayurveda, I say everything in life is made up of these 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space. And so that includes our minds, that includes our bodies, that includes your pets, that includes the trees, that includes the grass, that includes all the different things, even this wood. It's earth element, but it also has water, fire, air, and space at some way or another. And you can inspect that, and then you can start to interpret, what is the fire element there? What is spaciousness? This seems dense, right? You can hold it, feel it, and touch it. But we know it's mostly empty space. And so earth element is what gives your mind and body a sense of solidity and a sense of stability. That's what the earth element is. Prithvi is the Sanskrit. Water element. Anything that gives fluidity. It's the principle of moisture, fluidity, and flow. You see? And so anything that gives your body moisture, water element. It doesn't mean it's H2O. It's not water literally, it's the principle of water element. It's the poetry of the water element. So it's what gives you fluidity, it's what gives the mind fluidity. If you know a person is just too dry, it's like give them a little bit of more flow, a little more softness. What is it? What does water do? You get in the bathtub and you come out and your skin is soft and nice. So this is the water element. And number 3 is, of course, fire element. So fire, not obviously literal fire, but anything that gives warmth or creates transformation. So what is the heart doing in your organism, in your body? It's a beating, but what is it doing? It's circulating blood to all the different tissues and to the organs and into the extremities. And so you have cold hands and feet. Not enough blood is getting out there into the extremities. So really what it's doing is circulating warmth. So we know in Ayurveda, as all the Oriental and indigenous systems of medicine know, that blood is connected to fire. It doesn't take rocket science. So it's already in our language. That guy, hot-blooded. Maybe let him cool off before going to chat with him. And so it's already in our language. That guy, cold-blooded. You know what I mean? It's in our language. We know because we can sense. You see, this isn't a foreign thing. India may be foreign to some of us, but the principles are definitely not foreign. They are the exact, they're the opposite of foreign. They are the principles of what is real, the principles of how the architecture of this reality works. So fire is heat and transformation. Anything that brings warmth is the fire element. So okay, well, I'm sure people did. What are your symptoms? How did it feel when you're like excruciating pain in your lower abdomen? Is it hot or is it cold? Is it soft or is it hard? So each of these elements we understand through their qualities, and so you go through 10 pairs of opposites in Ayurveda. We learn the 10 pairs of opposites, so then we know the different qualities of each element. And when you know the different, is it hot or is it cold? Is it heavy or is it light? Is it rough or is it smooth? And so forth. That we study in the course. For today, we'll keep it very simple. It's fire element, heat, transformation, and then you go to 4, and that would be the air element. Water is Apa, fire is Agni, air is Vayu, is the Sanskrit. And so air element is not just air, it's the principle of mobility and movement. Anything that is moving is the air element. So what's the nervous system predominantly governed by? Air element. Because the nerve current must move, air and fire. And so because the gray matter of your brain is fire element, helping you to transform a sensory experience and then metabolize it into something useful or non-useful. And if it's non-useful, hopefully it's eliminated and don't care. Or if it's useful, it's some nutrient to our life, it's good. So digestion process is happening at both this more subtle mental psychological level, as well as the physical level, where if you eat that kale salad, that's raw kale, can you digest it? Yeah, sure, we know there's tons of nutrients in it, but what's it look like when you're eliminating? Have we inspected that? I know it's not the most aesthetic thing. Everyone wants a more aesthetic type of Ayurveda, but mostly Ayurveda is not very aesthetic. It's mostly like examining stools and what's the quality of the urine and so forth. But that gives you the aesthetic, because then that's when the glow starts to come, when you build deeper vitality. But you have to go through the mud to get to the medicine sometimes. So air is motion. So when anytime my brain, my hands do all these weird moving things, somehow my brain is sending the signal through the nervous system, and it's making the hands be in motion, and my voice is talking, and so forth and so on. So anywhere there is movement is air. So if there's excessive movement, say as I just cannot stop thinking, this is air element. So it's motion. I'm restless at night. I can't sleep. So if you know that gives you power, especially when you understand how to balance it. We'll get there in just a moment. Okay. And then the fifth is called ether, or akasha, space. And so in most systems there's 4 elements, but Ayurveda and the yogic system have 5 elements, because all those other elements, earth, water, fire, and air, operate within space. So in this case, space becomes a very important element as well, because it's something that we always have to manage. We want to create good space in our lives. And that's very much what our bodies and minds are, is earth, water, fire, and air moving through channels of space. You have the channels of your digestive system, the channels of the circulatory system, the channels of the urinary system, and so forth and so on. You have the subtle channels of the mind, and then even the super subtle channels of the prana, the chi, the life force. And so that is what, from a very simple but yet very practical, effective, and sophisticated context, you can understand your mind and body through these 5 basic elements, or they call in Ayurveda not the 5 basic elements, but the Pancha Mahabhuta, the 5 great elements. They're spoken about with tremendous reverence, not in the more a little bit intellectual way that I'm delivering it there. But these are, what they end up becoming is essentially the various deities. Why? Because we understand it's not the deities that we're like worship in a Western way, but more so we just understand that my relationship to fire itself is very influential on the health of my mind and body. My relationship to air and ether, my relationship to earth and water. Why do all the indigenous cultures have like ceremonies around water, ceremonies around fire? This is not archaic. This is wisdom. This is creating harmony with our own minds and bodies, because we say create harmony with nature. You are nature. The mind and the body is part of nature. It is a living organism created by nature. Any of our guys, all these, folks in Silicon Valley, and everybody was, creating the different robots and artificial intelligence. Nothing comes anywhere near as sophisticated as a human consciousness. And who can design the brain? Who can design this reality with the sun coming up and the moon and the planets in the orbit and the stars and the firmament and the heart beating is beyond. What is that intelligence? That's what we're putting ourselves in harmony with. That's why we might have like a ceremony around water, because we're suffering. And and even if we're not suffering, we're experiencing the suffering of others, and we're kind of giving thanks and praying and putting positive, uplifted energy into the elements of our lives. Water element, your ability to feel. Fire element, your ability to perceive. Air element, your ability to touch. And so on and so forth. Ether element, the ability to hear. So it's not just literal hearing at the most dense level, but to really hear. What is the voice of reason? What is the voice of wisdom? And my ability to come into alignment with that voice. This is what happens when we start to create a more subtle relationship, and that becomes a more reverent relationship, not in some religious type way, but in a very practical, organic, courtship of love to, I just want to be free. I just want to be happy. I just don't want to suffer, and I don't want anyone else to suffer either. And so then you explore all routes of trying to figure that out, and you eventually, all the different traditions all over the world, they essentially come to this in some way, shape, or form. And so what Ayurveda does, which is so unique and so beautiful and so helppful, is it takes these 5 elements and it turns them into 3. Essentially, because this is what it's saying. It's saying, and really I started with earth, but I did that for teaching purposes because earth is the easiest to understand. It's the most tangible. You can touch it, you can feel it. But then as you go further down, it's more subtle. But really what it usually does, it starts at ether is the first, and everything comes out of ether. But that's more for another day. And for those of you who want to jump into the class, we go into the deeper architecture of it all and how it goes from the one vibratory nucleus of the creation and then ends up at the 5 elements and then goes further. But for today, we start here. So what Ayurveda is saying that in life, air and ether operate together, practically speaking, and functioning in the body. And they call that vata. So if you've heard anything about Ayurveda, if you're new to this, you've probably heard these terms. And on the other polarity of that, you have earth and water. And in nature, earth and water tend to mix. They tend to mix. Air and ether tend to mix. It's called vata. Earth and water tend to mix. It's called kapha. And in the middle, mostly fire, also a little bit of water, but for today, just consider mostly fire. Pitta. Okay, so when you get air and ether, you can think of it as like wind. It's empty space and it's motion. So vata in our lives, it creates motion. On the negative side and on the challenging side, and the reason these are called doshas is because, once again, Ayurveda is looking at these principles through the context of trying to bring something back into balance and to create balance. So these are called doshas, and the word dosha implies an imbalance, or it's that which spoils, and that's why it gets translated later, kind of relates into like the Greek medicine is like humors. But that's only a very limited understanding of what they mean, but that's where the word dosha generally comes from. So vata on the challenging side will give us anxiety, worry, fear, doubt. It will give us cold body temperature, overly cold body temperature. It can give us like osteoarthritis, wearing away of the tissue. Deterioration of any tissue is a vata thing. Most common that we think of with vata, deterioration of the nervous system tissue, so where we get a dementia style of diseases, and those very difficult, challenging things because of vata. Time of the life is the last part of the life. So we'll get into that in just a moment. And on the positive side, though, vata is what gives you breath. It's what gives you life. Vata gives you enthusiasm. Vata gives you creativity. Vata is very sensitive. Again, tune in right into the heavens. Is air and ether. So vata is uplifting. And so you can have vata at its highest, most desirable expression. This uplifting, pure energy, all the way down to its most difficult frequencies, to where it's totally out of any sense of trust and complete anxiety and overwhelm and this type of thing. And so then you can go to the opposite side, and you could say kapha, and kapha is that like mud, water and earth together. So the mucous membranes of the body is kapha. Any growth is kapha. So anything that's anabolic in nature, any growth of tissue, growths on the body is kapha, if you have some sort of growth. But also if there's too much sluggishness, laziness, or complacency, obesity, overly melancholy is examples of kapha. So it's when this bioenergy is excessive, you see. when excess anxiety, this bioenergy is excessive, vata. And in the middle, you have pitta. Up here, water and earth. Down here, air and ether. And in the middle is pitta. And that's why you can make the argument that the most important of all the elements is fire. Because if you have too much air and ether, the fire will blow out. If you have too much earth and water, it'll put the fire out. Like too many logs, the flame can't get going. Air and ether is too much wind, you can't even start the fire. And so all of us, what the human organism is really a metabolic organism. And our ability to digest is what gives rise to our ability to live with greater vitality and enjoyment and sense of purpose. So fire in the middle is metabolism. But fire is also the fire of your intellect. Fire is also digestion. You get too much fire, you might be like me, where there's ulcerations in the lower intestines and so forth. Inflammation is fire element. So these are the basic ways that we think of this, and now how it expresses itself in the body and mind in their more non-desirable. Kapha in its positive desirable, it gives you sweetness, love, earth and water. The same thing that gives depression can give you devotion, love. The steadiness, instead of complacency and laziness, you're steady, you're consistent, you're on point, you're on time, you got a rhythm to it. And then in the middle, the positive aspects of the pitta dosha is that it gives you warmth. It gives you good passion. It gives you a type of fire for life. You want to digest things. It gives you wisdom. It can give you glow, and it can give you radiance when it's in its higher expression. So the basic principle in Ayurveda, if there's an excess of one element, you balance it with its opposite element. So if I am a vata type person, because all of us come in with a certain balance, we all have all of the elements, but all of us have a unique balance of all the elements. So if you have predominantly fire, and then less air and ether, and even more less earth and water, that would be a pitta person. If you have, did I say that right? Predominantly fire. Yeah, so if you have predominantly fire, you're a pitta person. If you have predominantly air and ether, we all have all of them. But if you predominantly air and ether, we call you vata constitution. And it would be reflected in the way you look. It would be reflected in the way you think. Vata people, longer limbs, thinner body types. Kapha people, if you have more earth and water, more kapha, it'll be stockier, bigger boned, thicker skin, thicker hair, and all of this. And so pitta's in the middle, but more intense features, more angular features. It will show itself, and it's definite, it's 100%. That's why you can't learn Ayurveda and then decide that there's no such thing as Ayurveda as something, because it's not. Because you're going to see, oh yeah, that's what my wife or husband or mom or dad is, and yep, they have those features, and yep, they do that too. And it's not always bang, 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 bang like that. But eventually, if you spend enough time with it, it starts to get really simple. You'll be able to just look at someone and be like, yep, that pitta person. And that's helpful in life. You understand yourself better and your own tendencies, and then you understand others better, and also their tendencies helps you have more compassion. Sometimes our judgmental tendencies come because we think people should be a little more like us. Because we're especially the pitta people, because they're so smart. That's the positive side, really intelligent, really intellectual, but that can create egotism because I'm so smart. I certainly know more than you. Certainly have better perspective of this than you. That's the imbalanced pitta person. Obviously, the vata person will go insecurity. It's like, I definitely don't know as much as them. And they can't trust the intuition. And so you lose that sense of confidence of vata person. This one had too much confidence sometimes. You have to be careful. And slow that thing down. Relax. Their mantra is chill. Their mantra, relax. Their mantra is get up and go. The kapha person will kind of can check out. It's they're not really that so motivated. They don't have the and these are just our tendencies, our starting point. So if we know what the potential imbalances of each of these three categories are, then that gives us the ability to balance them. And so no, yes, this is my tendency. I need to do that. I need to have good fire energy. I need to find healthy avenues in my life to express my fire energy, if I'm a Pitta person especially. Otherwise, that fire, it's not going anywhere, and it's going to blaze in some other area of life that won't be so healthy, such as like in communications, when you're in your more emotional relationships. So then for that Vata person, they need to be able to go spacey and be out, but that can't be the unconscious tendency, because if it's an unconscious tendency only, then we can keep going in that direction and we get the imbalance of it, and all of a sudden now that same energy that can provide you good creativity and good life force is expressing itself anxiousness, anxiety, insecurity, and overwhelm. So you can see it kind of does open a bit of a can of worms once you start to do it, but hopefully what this encourages you to do is to want to understand it. That gives you a little bit more of a yearn to learn. And because these are not just how they affect the physical body. When the spring comes, like right now in the northern hemisphere, when the spring comes, it's the kapha time of the year. It's time of growth, where the rains, April showers bring May flowers. The rains, it's water, it's earth. The water is softening the ground, and the seeds come up. And it's a more heavy time of year where you want to do a cleanse, because the body is most supported to do a cleanse when there's more earth and water. You start cleansing while the air and ether is high, more potential challenges and unwanted side effects from over-cleansing. And so in the springtime is the kapha season. Then it warms up even more. The days become longer. It's the fire pitta season. And then finally, as the pitta season starts to end, you enter fall, winter, air and ether. Everything dries up. Vata, cold. Everything becomes colder. And everything dies. And so that's also the times of our lives when we're born and we're little cute, little chubby, little babies and adolescents, and they got cheeks that you want to squeeze, and they love sweets because earth and water creates the sweet taste, and that's a sweet time of life. Then they get a little older, then they turn into teenagers, and the cheeks are gone, and they don't want to snuggle anymore, and they got a little more attitude, and because they're finding identity. Could you imagine how I was? I was so like that I developed ulcers. God bless my mom and dad. And so this is the beginning of the pitta time of life. But that's why teenage years are always tend to be more difficult, because it's the one time of life when all three doshas are influencing that person. Because you're moving out of the kapha time of life, you're entering the pitta time of life, and vata rules all transitions. Vata rules all your joints, like transition from one part of the arm to the other part of the arm, one time of life to the next part of life. You see the mathematics? It's bioenergies. It's understanding the physics of nature. And so then you get the pitta time of your life, middle age, now you're working, maybe you're having children. It's your more active time of your life, like the summer long days. And then as you go into the more elderly years, we enter into the winter time of our life, air and ether time of our life, where the body tissues are literally becoming lighter. And so we don't like that. We don't want to age, we want to stay young. But what Ayurveda shows us how to do is how to age more slowly and how to age more gracefully, so that we can enjoy the different phases of the life. But if we start earlier and we're learning to pacify vata before we get to that vata time of life, that'll be easier. But if we're in the vata time of life, then definitely we want to learn this and start to work with it, or especially if it's right around the corner. And that's usually like postmenopausal for women, and around the same age for men. They say post-midlife crisis for men, something like that. But that's just the beginning, because it goes all the way to the end of your life. The positive and beautiful side of that is that when everything lightens, you see, Vata is, from the Ayurvedic context, is talking once again, what causes us discomfort, what causes us pain, what causes us disease. But let's switch the context over. And this is something I put special emphasis on. This is when we do teach Ayurveda, looking at it from the yogic angle as its predominant angle, and then flipping back and forth the context. So not always looking for what's wrong, but appreciating and enjoying what's right, even right now. And so when we're aging, the tissue's lightening. That creates an inner environment that will help us tune into whatever is about to happen next. Because all of us are going to have to leave this body, and it's good that we have an environment. That's how nature is. She supports us. She gives the perfect conditions for us to come out of the womb. Like, have you ever been around a birth? I know a lot of us have. Many of you have given birth. I had the great fortune of being present when my son was born. Nature does that. You need a midwife there, or whatever, but that thing just happens for the most part. And that's going to be the same as we pass on, isn't it? It's very natural. And so this is about being in harmony with that, so we can and definitely this is a possibility for all of us, even enjoy that, leaving our body. Definitely that's a possibility. If we're cultivating that relationship, if we're really exploring, if I'm really exploring the possibility that I'm going back into the nucleus of the self, love, truth, energy, at least for a little bit. And so these are the bioenergies, you see, and they govern all of that. The times of the day, the sun comes up, Kapha time of the day, hot time of the day, middle day, Pitta time of the day. The day is dying, the sun is setting, air and ether is predominant. The moon rises, Kapha time of the night, best time to go to bed before 10 p.m. Good luck. And then you'll get a better night. We all know that your sleep is better if you get to bed by 10. If you stay up till 11, you usually get your second wind, or you don't get as good enough sleep. Because that's the Pitta time of the night. The liver becomes active that time of the night. Fire is higher. Vata time of the night, early morning before the sun rises. The night is dying, so to speak. And so that's air and ether. That's why yogis get up. That's what they call Amrit Vela or Brahma Muhurta, God's favorite time. The hours, 2.5 hours just before the sun has risen. And that's when it's just like in the elder years, the just naturally most conducive for connecting with the great spirit of life. The early morning is the winter time in the time cycle, and the air and ether are predominant. And so this is how beautiful it is. And then finally you have Kapha is anabolism, the growth of tissue in the body, the growth of the cell. And Vata is catabolism, the winter energy, the winter force, the Shiva force, the purification of the cell, purification of tissue. You need both. And the balance of anabolism and catabolism creates your metabolism. So all of us should be concerned and interested in harmonizing that. Metabolic. We are fire organisms, metabolic organisms. Our vitality is dependent on and not having too much, not having too little, having just enough. That's an art. How can that be a science? That has to be only part science to get us started, but then to have just enough is an art. That takes flow and intuition and sense of purpose, to where your sense of dharma is guiding you. And then you say, yeah, that would be nice, but that's not really in line with the dharma of my life. And so that's how you start to get into that field of energy that we could call just enough. And so in the Indian mythology, you could look at it. Brahma is the creator. Vishnu is the sustainer. And then Shiva is the destroyer. That's where those deities come from. Not just this, they come from such substance, but this is one way of looking at it. It's how it's sometimes used as an acronym in Kundalini Yoga, G-O-D, the generating, organizing, and destroying principles that govern all of life. So very beautiful. So this is the building blocks of Ayurveda. Now I think you can see. This is why I also say is that, what is Ayurvedic? Is those dandelion greens Ayurvedic? Well, it just depends. Am I using the principles of Ayurveda? If I'm having dandelion greens in a Vata body in the wintertime, then no, it's kind of the opposite of Ayurvedic, because dandelion is bitter, and bitter is air and ether. So air and ether is going to be brought into the air and ether, an organism living in the air and ether system, and a constitution that was already born with a lot of air and ether, but somebody told us to cleanse, and somebody told us how great a liver cleanse is, so we're going dandelion, 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 but we didn't have the context potentially have the context of make sure to do that in a season where it's supported and also in a time of the life. So if that person is a more elderly person, then you have to be careful with bringing too much air and ether. And so it's not that we don't do cleanses like that. We do, of course. It's not that we don't do all the different interesting health things that are out there and new innovations and developments. Definitely we do. But we use these principles to give us more wisdom in how we do it and when we do it. If I'm a fiery person living in a fiery climate in the summertime, I should be really smart about making sure I'm putting herbs and foods in my body each day that are going to cool my bloodstream down so that I'm not accumulating inflammation over long periods of time. Because what ends up happening in the most difficult things are the things that have accumulated for long periods of time, unbeknownst to us, because we have a threshold. You have a certain threshold of your vitality of what it can handle until it pops that threshold and it can no longer handle it. So by the time something becomes a symptom, accumulation, aggravation has been happening for already a long time. And so that's why Ayurveda gets in and it shows you, okay, this is what this looks like before it even becomes accumulating and aggravating. Here's what it looks like when that tendency has become aggravated and is starting to overflow. Only later does it manifest into a physical symptom to where then we catch it and we see it, then we start to treat it. But if you can be working with the bioenergies of your body on an ongoing basis, and if you're doing a little yoga and meditation every morning, you're going to be much more tuned into your body, and you're going to be able to feel when the heat comes up or when the air and ether are too high because you're colder than normal and it's even the summertime and I'm feeling cold. Well, there's some vata thing that is there. Let me go take this herb to remedy it. Let me go. So it's more like, instead of always being on these regimens, it's really about paying attention and having the language to give guidance and wisdom to what you're experiencing. And so this is what the study of Ayurveda is about. And that's why in this brand new complete course of Ayurveda, which is the most comprehensive course we've ever created, I'm very happy about it. And this was the first course I ever taught that actually gave birth to the whole Life Force Academy. Well over 10 years. The first time we ever did this Ayurveda course, it was still like teleseminars, and you would call into a bridge line because the internet wasn't fast enough yet to handle that kind of stuff. And then eventually internet speeds increased. We started to do videos. And so we've had a couple versions, and now we've just created the third version since we've been filming it. And I really love it. It's not only are you going to be doing the Ayurvedic work, but now with this version, each module, and there's 10 modules, is designed to go over 10 weeks. So even if you had like a couple hours to enjoy the experience of Ayurveda, to kind of tune in, to create a nice space for yourself, and to go back into this space more consistently, where we're tuning in and learning about ourselves, learning about our bodies and minds and the elements, how to create harmonic relationship with the elements, how to bring more sweetness into your life, how to take, less bitterness when there's too much, a little more bitter when there's not enough. And that's both literal and metaphorical. Metaphorical is that sometimes we need a little bitter because we've gotten a little stagnant. But then often it's the case what we need is real sweetness, and not just sweetness that is delivered by a creme brulee, but sweetness that comes from a much more substantive place in us. And then that the unwholesome conjunction of my sense organs with the objects of their affection will start to fade away. Because when you generate sweetness inside yourself, and that's what Ayurveda is really about, using all the different tastes, the different plants and the different herbs and the different foods, and aligning that with your unique constitution to create true sweetness. Most everyone is going after the superficial sweetness, both in our foods and in our lives, and expecting to get long-term results. That's not how it works. In fact, the very habit of going after superficial sweetness is the root cause of suffering, if you were to ask like the Buddha. And so all of life is dukkha. What we're trying to create is good space, sukha, happiness. And you have to get real sweetness, there has to be a good space created. And that's called balancing the elements, that in a unique way for you, because you're different than me. Every single person is uniquely themselves, has a totally unique design. Like I like to say, everyone has a perfect constitution. Everyone has the perfect body type. Everyone has the perfect horoscope. It's just exactly as it should be. This whole thing was generated by the intelligence of nature. You don't go look at that tree and say, oh, that tree's not so, you know, somebody messed up. But with the human organism, you say, somebody must have messed up. But that's not the case. So it's a discovery of really the brilliant nature of you and your mind and your body and your spirit, your soul, your unique heart. And I want to invite you to take this journey with us. It's about to begin, and we're going one module released every week. And you can take it at your own time. Even if you can't start right away, encourage you to start right away, because we have a big group of people from all over the world that we're starting together. And we're releasing the first module, and then we'll go into the second module the next week. But you have it. If you get this course, you own it. You can take it again and again. And I bet you probably will, because after a decade of people taking this course, more people have taken this complete course of Ayurveda for us than anything else we've ever offered. It's by far been our most popular course. But it's also the oldest one we have. And so if you really take it, you're going to you need to get through all seasons, you know, just to kind of get through that cycle once, to even have some perspective once you're actually working with these principles. Then it's good to take the course again, or you can listen to it. We provide it in both video, to where you really encourage, you know, you sit down, you create a nice space anywhere. It can be your closet, it doesn't matter, but somewhere where you have your own space. And you can tell your family or whoever you live with that you're doing this, and you would love the support, that like once a week, I would love space just for me to do this. And who knows, it may benefit everyone, because these things, you don't have to say that, but it probably will. And once a week you create a space, because we have meditations with each module. In this case, Kundalini Yoga meditations. Of course, it's optional, but definitely encourage, because what we encourage you to do is do the Kriya, do the meditation exercise we're going to provide in the course. Anyone can do these. And then take the module, because then you bring yourself into the more of that intuitive, enlivened space to then be a good vehicle for the Ayurveda. And so but we provided audio as well. So if like you want to, listen to that module again while you're taking the kids to school, or while you're hiking or walking the dog, you can easily do that. And you own it. You can download everything, so you don't have to rely on internet signals if you're traveling, or if you live somewhere where the internet can be shady or sketchy or not good. So that's how the course works, and it takes you very systematically. Really, the first few modules of the course, it will really unpacks the kind of inner structure, the cosmology of the whole thing, so that then when you get to herbs, then when you get to food and diet, you're going to study Dravya Guna, the art of Ayurvedic alchemy, which then leads into what is Ayurvedic herbalism, and then Ayurvedic diet. And you'll understand these things very well. I'm very confident of that. Because it's simple. It's deep, but it's simple. You don't have to have one certain type of brain or intellect to understand this. It's not like some of us were good at algebra, and others weren't, is our brain didn't function that way. It's poetic enough that it will kind of shape itself to your way of understanding, because it's all the elements. It has them all. And so if you're a more watery person, more feeling, intuitive, versus that fiery intellectual person, versus let me just do it at my own pace type of person, and all that type of thing. So that's how the course works. And if you get the course, then there's also there's some cool things that are included with it. First of all, as we're going through it, every other week there's going to be a question and answer session, but these are actually more than question and answer sessions. They're essentially like 90-minute classes where the first 30 minutes I'm going to be unpacking some of the things that I didn't get to or want to elaborate further on in the course. And that's things like Ayurveda and sexuality, Ayurveda, and do you remember what any of the others were? They're all interesting topics. There'll be more on herbalism, because you have an herbalism module in the Ayurveda course. You really have two, because you have Dravya Guna and then herbalism. But there's always more to talk about, and everybody always has questions about it. So the first 30 minutes of these live sessions are going to be, I'm going to give some teachings. And then the second hour, or the next 60 minutes, is going to be question and answer. And you can attend those live, but they'll also all be recorded. If you attend them live, you can actually ask your question. We can talk back and forth. But if you can't attend live, then the recording will be there and you'll have it indefinitely. And you own this course when you get it. And another 2 bonuses after that, or actually there's more. There's the bonus class that is Ayurvedic astrology, where it's a special class I'm going to teach. You can all attend and get the recording. But I'm going to teach it, and it's using these principles and using learning at least the foundation of the ability to look at someone's Vedic horoscope, and to be able to get a better sense of what your constitution is, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and how it's expressing itself in your life. So Ayurvedic astrology. The next bonus is making Ayurvedic herbal formulas. So you get all the backbone for this in the main course, but then there's a bonus class that is about how, if you want to actually make your own herbal formulas, I'm going to give you some really cool, interesting, and simple practical ways to make really good medicines yourself. You can, by ordering the ingredients, you can even grow some stuff if you want to, and that type of thing. And so then there's also an Ayurvedic cooking class where we're going to go into the kitchen together. And by that point, we're releasing these bonuses at the end of the course, because at that point you will have a good grasp on Ayurveda. And then when we bring that into the kitchen, it's much more substantive than if we were to just do Ayurvedic cooking right now. I can show you some stuff, but when you understand Ayurveda and now we're bringing it into the kitchen, it's really cool and it's really fun. And so we will make a meal. And so that's Ayurvedic cooking class. And then finally is our Life Force Academy immersion, which is a wonderful blend of Ayurveda and yoga. But this is a multi-day event that likely most everyone will have to attend virtually this year, but we put on amazing virtual events and they're really great. And you could carve out that time and take this event. And so we're going to give everyone a really significant discount to that if you would like to attend that virtual event. But you can look at that a little later. What I really recommend that you consider is, do you want to jump in for this Ayurveda course? Complete course of Ayurveda. I certainly would love to be your guide in this and would love to have you on this journey. As I mentioned, we already have so many people from all over the world that are doing this, and we're all doing it together. And so the regular price is $675 is the full price for the course, and you get all of it. You get all the 10 modules, whether you're doing them each week or you have to wait. It'll be waiting for you when you're ready to get started. All of those bonuses, all the Q&A sessions, and all of that when you register for the course. But right now, for a handful of days more, there's a sale, an early bird sale. So if you get in now, and the information is on your webpage, everything you want to see, all the details for this, the descriptions and the names of all the modules. And if you really, some of you may be like, I'm in, great, awesome. Some of you, if you're still on the fence, there's the webpage here has everything you'll want to know, most likely. If not, then we have an amazing support team that you can email at any time, support@jaidevsingh.com. Beautiful team of people. So the early bird price is only $375. So the regular price is $675. The early bird price, which is only available for I think a few more days, is $375. So that's awesome. And there's also a payment plan here. So if you that makes it easier for you. It's just easy installments, and we don't hold anything back. So it makes it, you can just space out your payments. If you've taken the course in the past, there's an upgrade price. It's just $108 to upgrade to this new version of it, which is much more substantial, actually, longer, more in it. The meditation practices that go along, and actually it's not just throwing any meditations in there, but they all work with whatever the elements we're working with in the course at that time and whatever the topic and concept is. So it's not only learning Ayurveda, it's going through a healing process yourself, though it's, again, unless you're like a Buddha, then we all are in a healing process, and it's tuning into the joys of life and bringing alive the deeper love and intelligence of life. And so that's what it is. If any of you get the course, if you register for this course and you pay for it, and for any reason at all you decide that this isn't for you and that you want a refund, as long as you let our team know, and within 60 days time, they'll send you a full refund. We always guarantee these courses. And so that's what it is. If you can click on the button here. It really just takes a minute to register. It's super easy. Click on the button to check out. That'll take you to our checkout page. You just put the info in. It's totally secure. And it's really simple. You do not have to be technologically savvy to do this course, and this work is very beautifully produced. The video work, the audio work is all top-notch, world-class. So we have an amazing team, amazing production team, and we're super, super happy and grateful to be offering this to you all right now. At this time in life, it's the perfect time for Ayurveda. We need it. We need it on the planet. And so if you're not able to do the full course, I hope this was enjoyable and helpful for you, and that we can stay connected. You can find me on all the social media networks, on Instagram. I'm there. We can connect. But if you're feeling the vibes, please do join in, click through. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you to the whole team for making this all happen. And looking forward to getting started with so many of you in the course. All right, see you soon.